There's a conversation your parents never had with you. And it wasn't because they forgot, and it wasn't because they didn't love you. It was because in your house, like in most houses, money was something you quietly managed behind closed doors. You never, ever explained it to the children. You handled it in low voices at the kitchen table after everyone was supposed to be in bed. You handled it in the car on the way home from the supermarket, with the radio turned up just enough. You handled it, but you never talked about it. So you didn't learn about money from a conversation. You learned from watching, from the way your mom's whole body shifted when the phone rang and she saw it was the bank. The way your dad changed the subject so smoothly, so practiced, that you almost didn't notice he'd done it at all. You learned from the school trip permission slip that sat on the counter for 3 days and then quietly disappeared. From the birthday request you instinctively knew better than to make. From the look, and you know exactly the look I'm talking about, the look that crossed your parents' face when you asked for something at the wrong time of the month. Nobody handed you a rule book. Nobody sat you down and said, "Here is how we think about money in this family." But you have one. And today we're going to read it out loud, because a lot of what feels like your personality around money, it didn't start with you. You have probably given yourself a label. Maybe it sounds like, "I'm just bad with money. I'm too generous. I can't say no. I have an anxiety thing." That diagnosis is wrong, or at the very least, it's incomplete, because what you're describing isn't a character flaw. It's not a willpower issue. It has nothing to do with how intelligent you are. What you're describing is what happens when a child spends 15 years absorbing a family money script, a full set of unspoken beliefs about what money means, how it flows, who gets to keep it, and who has to give it away. You're not broken. You're just running software that was installed before you were old enough to choose a different program. Think of it this way. When you were born, your brain was essentially a brand new phone. No default set, no apps installed. And your family? They were the developers. They were quietly doing the coding, constantly. Through every argument you weren't supposed to hear, every question that got deflected, every time the adult said, "We're fine," while everything around you suggested otherwise. What they were building wasn't lessons, it was responses. What does your body do when a bill arrives? What happens inside you when someone you love asks you for money? What does it mean, emotionally, not logically, when someone around you has noticeably more than you do? What does your nervous system do when you think about sitting down and actually looking at your finances? Those answers didn't come from you. They were built by the environment you were raised in, by people who were themselves running the scripts their parents had written for them. And now you are living a completely different life from the one your parents lived. Different income, different generation, different pressures, different possibilities. But you are still, underneath all of it, running that original code. That's not weakness. It's just what happens until someone shows you the code. Almost every family money script, regardless of culture, background, or income level, is built around 3 core rules. None of them are ever said out loud. All 3 of them are running your life right now. And by the time we're done here, I think you're going to recognize every single one. Rule 1. The silence. In your house, money was handled. It was never discussed. There were no family conversations about the budget, no explanations for why some months felt harder than others. When things were tight, the adults got quieter, or they argued somewhere you weren't supposed to hear, and then they came back into the room and acted like everything was fine. And you, because you were a child and children are always watching, learned that the correct response to money stress is to absorb it without comment, to not ask questions, and to never, under any circumstances, be the one who makes it worse. That training is still running. It shows up in the way you avoid opening your banking app when you're already anxious. It shows up in the conversation you and your partner need to have, the one about the credit card or the savings, or the fact that you're both spending in ways neither of you fully understands. It shows up as this deep, uncomfortable sense that money is a private, shameful subject that responsible adults handle alone. We have a name for this: financial avoidance. It's not a character flaw, it's a nervous system response. When you grow up in a home where money is treated as a taboo, your nervous system learns to treat money conversations as a threat. And your nervous system is very, very good at protecting you from threats. It was just trained to protect you from the wrong thing. The silence your parents kept to manage their stress became the silence that is now keeping you from managing yours.
Rule 2. The rescue. There is someone in your family who gets the call when things go wrong. When the rent comes up short, when a car breaks down at the worst possible moment, when school fees are due and somehow nobody else is available. One person gets the call, and that person says yes because the rule has always been that the one who has steps in for the ones who don't. Maybe that person is you. And if it is, I need you to understand that nobody decided this consciously. It evolved because you were reliable. You picked up. You were probably the first in your family to reach some level of financial stability. And your family, who love you, quietly began to build their emergency system around your income. There is a name for this dynamic: the family ATM. One person whose income is treated silently, by assumption, as a shared resource that everyone else has a quiet claim on. And the particular cruelty of this role is that the person living inside it usually cannot name the problem without feeling like a monster. Because what kind of person actually counts the cost of helping their own family? The kind who is going without things they need so that everyone else can stay comfortable. That's who. If you are sending hundreds of dollars or pounds to family every month, think about what that number looks like across a year. Thousands that haven't touched your emergency fund, your pension, the financial stability you are pouring out of yourself and into a system that was never designed to give anything back. And I want you to notice something, because this is where it gets really important. If you are the family ATM, there is almost certainly a ceiling that comes with it, which brings us to Rule 3. Rule 3, the ceiling. When you're the family ATM, when you know, somewhere deep down, that the more you earn, the more will be expected of you, your brain starts to do something very quiet and very rational. It starts to resist growing, not because you don't want success, because success, in your experience, has always meant becoming more accountable for everyone else's problems. And even if you're not the family ATM, the ceiling was probably still there because you grew up watching what was possible for people in your world. And your developing brain did what developing brains do, which is look for patterns and treat them as facts. Your parents worked hard and stayed roughly where they started. And without anyone having to say a word, you concluded that this is simply what the ceiling looks like for people like you. So now you earn more than they did. And you still feel like you're barely keeping up. You feel like something is about to go wrong. People raised in financially anxious households tend to underestimate their own earning potential, avoid investment decisions even when they can afford them, and self-sabotage at exactly the moment when real growth becomes possible. Not because they lack capability, but because their internal picture of what they're allowed to have has never been updated to match the life they're actually living. You are not being realistic. You are being loyal to a limit that stopped being true a long time ago, and you've been carrying it so long you forgot it was something you borrowed. These 3 rules are not just emotional patterns. They have a real, measurable cost. The silence keeps couples living in completely separate financial worlds where debt hides in plain sight and resentment builds quietly for years. They're not fighting about the credit card. They're fighting about trust. They're fighting about feeling unseen and out of control and scared.
But because nobody named the actual thing, the argument never resolves, it just repeats.
The rescue keeps your financial life on permanent pause. You've worked for your stability. You built it, and it is being redistributed, quietly, monthly, before it ever has a chance to compound into something that actually changes your trajectory. And the ceiling keeps your income growing while the way you relate to money stays frozen at the level where you started. You earn more and still feel broke, not because the money isn't there, but because the script you're running was written for scarcity and has absolutely no instructions for what to do when things are actually okay. I am not going to give you a 10-step plan, because if a 10-step plan was what you needed, you'd have found one already. What I want to give you is something much smaller, and I think much more honest. Tonight, write one sentence, one family money rule in your own words that starts with, "In my family, we don't ask where the money went. In my family, we never turn family away when they need money. In my family, we acted like things were fine even when the kitchen table told a completely different story." Just one. And then write the word "because" underneath it and finish that honestly. Because my parents were genuinely scared. Because asking questions caused arguments. Because pride was the only stable thing we had. And then write one final line starting with "but now." But now, the silence is costing me my relationship. But now, I am going without things I need so that everyone else can be comfortable. But now, the fear of wanting more is the only thing standing between me and the future I keep saying I want. This is not a worksheet. This is the beginning of reading your own script out loud, maybe for the very first time. Because here's the thing about inherited rules. They only keep running because they stay invisible. Name one, and you've already changed your relationship to it. You can't edit something you've never admitted is there. The rules you inherited were not mistakes. They were survival strategies, built by people who were doing the absolute best they could with what they had in the economic reality they were navigating. That is true, and I think it's worth holding that gently as the context that finally takes some of the shame out of the story. But survival strategies from one generation don't automatically become building strategies for the next. What kept your family safe can be exactly the thing that keeps your family stuck. You're not bad with money. You're not too generous or too anxious. You are running a script that was written for someone else's life, for someone else's circumstances, for problems that may not even be yours anymore. And you get to decide, maybe for the first time, which parts of it you actually want to keep. That question is where this channel lives, and we are just getting started. This is We Don't Talk Money. Which rule did you grow up with? Tell me in the comments.